I understand the inconvenience, and I appreciate your patience. Recently, my sister-in-law came back to live with her parents after her marriage ended. She shared that differences in values and her husband's intense emotional mistreatment were the main reasons for their separation. At that time, my husband and I were staying at my in-laws' home, and upon her return, my sister-in-law felt the need to apologize to us. She also mentioned her plans to move out once she secures a new job and finds another place to live. I comforted her by saying, "This is your family's house. Don't worry, and take all the time you need to recover." Little did I know, this situation would start to weigh heavily on me. My name is Emily, and I'm a 24-year-old who manages the household while working part-time. My husband is currently away on a prolonged business trip due to his demanding career. Initially, we had our own place, but my mother-in-law, often left alone because my father-in-law travels for work, suggested we move in with them. She argued it would be economically beneficial for us and provide them some comfort knowing we were close by. Although surprised by the suggestion, I agreed, considering our pleasant relationship with my in-laws and my generally easygoing nature. After 3 years living together, I've started to question this decision. Everything was manageable until last year when my sister-in-law, Susan, came back following her divorce. That's when our household dynamics began to change. One evening, after returning from my part-time job, Susan expressed a desire for pot roast for dinner. I had already planned to cook grilled trout and informed her that pot roast wasn't on the menu for the night. My mother-in-law then intervened, reminding me of Susan's preference for pot roast, and implying that I, as the daughter-in-law, should cater to everyone's likes. I responded politely, yet chose not to dwell on her pointed comment, and proceeded to the kitchen. Reflecting on it now, the apologetic and humble demeanor Susan showed upon her return seems to have disappeared, suggesting perhaps her initial apologies were merely for show. I'm starting to suspect that my sister-in-law always planned to stay in the family home. Initially, my mother-in-law, who was once so welcoming, now seems to be entirely influenced by my sister-in-law. Every day, I feel like I'm seen more as managing the household chores. While juggling a part-time job leaves me exhausted, my sister-in-law does not help with any of the household responsibilities or finances. Instead, she spends her days either relaxing with my mother-in-law or going out. I've thought about the need for us to live separately, but my husband's frequent travels make it hard to find a good time to discuss this matter. There's another reason I find it hard to leave: my father-in-law's unwavering kindness. In the absence of my husband, the support of my father-in-law is the sole reason I can endure staying here. Despite possibly having indulged my sister-in-law as much as my mother-in-law has, he's the one who has my back, stepping in to reprimand her whenever she's out of line with me. He might say, "She may be our beloved daughter, but wrong is wrong," which unfortunately leads to conflicts with my mother-in-law, who accuses him of not siding with his own daughter and calls him a terrible husband. I'm concerned that if my husband and I were to move out, my father-in-law might end up being the one mistreated and belittled. Upon returning to our room, which serves as our makeshift bedroom, I let out a heavy sigh. I took my wallet out of my bag to count the money inside, recording the total in a notebook. This habit started about a year after my sister-in-law's divorce, when I first noticed money missing from my wallet. Initially, the discrepancies were small, just a few cents here and there, but soon the missing amounts grew, eventually reaching into the thousands. Keeping meticulous track of my finances, I became certain that someone was taking money from my wallet, treating my earnings as if they were inconsequential. Even when I attempted to keep my wallet on me to prevent further theft, my sister-in-law criticized me, claiming it was in the way of my chores. Reluctantly, I started to harbor suspicions towards my sister-in-law as the primary suspect behind the missing money. Despite not having a job since her divorce, she seemed to always have plans outside the home, leaving me puzzled about her source of income. I once brought up my concerns to my husband, but without concrete evidence, he couldn't offer much insight. Determined, I resolved to catch the thief myself, noticing that they seemed to be very cautious, never slipping up. Then, one day, while taking a brief respite from the endless chores assigned by my mother-in-law, I saw my sister-in-law sneak into our bedroom. A spark of realization hit me. Could this be the moment to catch her red-handed? With a sense of purpose, I entered the room and found her frozen, holding my wallet in the dim light, her fingers buried inside it, as if caught in the midst of a crime. In a calm yet firm tone, I confronted her. "What are you doing?" She quickly snapped the wallet shut, claiming she found it in the hallway and was just returning it to me. Her explanation fell short when I questioned why her fingers were inside my wallet if her intentions were genuine. Under the weight of my suspicion, she forced a smile, her face strained, and defensively asked why I was being so paranoid, especially when I supposedly only keep about $440 in there, a detail I had never shared. Raising her voice, she tossed the wallet back into my bag, denying any theft. At this point, I directly asked if she or our mother-in-law had ever taken money from my wallet, revealing my practice of keeping around $440 for emergencies, a habit known only to me. The confrontation escalated, drawing the attention of my mother-in-law, who entered the room at the sound of the argument. Seizing the opportunity, my sister-in-law played the victim, telling her mother that I was accusing her of theft, a claim that immediately put me in a bad light. My mother-in-law's glare was sharp and accusatory, dismissing my concerns and siding with my sister-in-law without a second thought. In that moment, I regretted not having recorded the encounter on my phone, which would have provided undeniable proof of her deceit. Caught up in my determination to expose the truth, I hadn't anticipated the backlash. My mother-in-law's accusation of treating Susan like a criminal stung deeply. "After everything, you're still an outsider," she said, insinuating that I was overreacting for attention. Her words, labeling me an outsider despite my efforts to integrate and contribute as part of the family, felt like a sharp blow. Unable to bear the situation any longer, I left the room and the house, ignoring my sister-in-law's remarks about dinner. My pace slowed as the evening air turned colder, and I found myself aimlessly wandering in my house clothes, an apron, and sandals, without my phone or wallet. Eventually, I settled on a park bench, lost in thought, until my father-in-law approached. He immediately recognized the apron, a gift from my mother-in-law when I first moved in, a reminder of a time when I felt welcomed. Accepting the coffee he offered, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer and shared the day's events, including the discovery of my sister-in-law with my wallet, and the subsequent disbelief and criticism from her and my mother-in-law. Listening quietly, my father-in-law expressed his regret for not intervening earlier to curb the disrespectful behavior of his wife and daughter. He suggested that perhaps it was time to reconsider our living arrangement, emphasizing that neither he nor my husband would want me to endure such treatment. Although his proposal was unexpected and considerate, the thought of leaving him to face the consequences alone filled me with guilt. He then suggested we return home, joking that bringing back fancy sandwiches might momentarily ease the tension. As we walked back, his knowing smile offered a glimmer of hope, a reminder that at least one person in the family saw and appreciated my efforts. This moment of understanding and support from my father-in-law highlighted the complexity of family dynamics and the challenges of finding one's place within them. Upon our return to the in-laws' house, the atmosphere was predictably tense until we presented the sandwiches we had brought for dinner. Instantly, the mood lightened somewhat, especially for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, though they continued to overlook me. Seeking solace in my room, I seized the opportunity to call my husband, eager to discuss the possibility of moving out and to share the day's unsettling events. 3 weeks later, during a quiet dinner with my in-laws, the peace was shattered by the sound of the front door crashing open. Sister-in-law had returned from her day out, her entrance marked by loud, angry footsteps that resonated through the hall. Despite father-in-law's plea for her to calm down, she stormed into the dining room, her glare fixed on me. In a dramatic gesture, she threw a handful of bills onto the table. However, instead of real currency, they were clearly toy bills, complete with a cartoonish figure where Benjamin Franklin's portrait should have been. Caught off guard by her actions, I feigned surprise, which only seemed to embarrass her further in front of our father-in-law. Ignoring my reaction, she loudly demanded to know what I was thinking. I calmly pointed out that her yelling was unnecessary, revealing that I had replaced the money in my wallet with toy bills as a test, suspecting her of theft, her attempt to use the fake bills without noticing their obvious falsity suggested. She had been taking money from me, more regularly than I thought, possibly not even checking the bills in her haste or due to the dim lighting in my room from the closed curtains. The real shock came when sister-in-law, caught off guard by my comments, inadvertently admitted to her actions. The room fell silent as mother-in-law, following her daughter's stunned gaze, realized the truth. The revelation that sister-in-law had been stealing from me, despite the monthly allowance mother-in-law had been secretly giving her from her savings, was a turning point, exposing the depth of the deceit and leading to a moment of reckoning for our family dynamics. The revelation of the truth left everyone in shock, especially father-in-law, who had always believed my side of the story. Discovering that mother-in-law had been secretly providing sister-in-law with a substantial monthly allowance without his knowledge, he could hardly hide his astonishment and disappointment. Sister-in-law's attempt to defend her actions, claiming she preferred the life of a housewife to the challenge of living independently and seeking employment, did little to justify her behavior. The idea that she felt entitled to use my money for her personal endeavors, including dating, was more amusing than infuriating to me. Sister-in-law, seeking support, turned to mother-in-law only to find herself alone as her mother averted her gaze, indicating a lack of sympathy. Cornered, sister-in-law lashed out, claiming the money she took was inconsequential and declared she couldn't forgive the embarrassment she faced twice because of the toy bills. As she raised her hand in anger, I braced for the impact, but it never came. To my relief, my husband intervened at the perfect moment, holding sister-in-law back from causing any harm. His unexpected return surprised not only me but also our in-laws. Explaining that he had finished his work early, my husband then addressed the ongoing situation. He had been fully informed about the harassment I endured from mother-in-law and sister-in-law, as well as my ultimate breaking point during a phone call after I had left the house in distress. In that call, which included father-in-law and was put on speakerphone, we had discussed our future plans. The ingenious idea to swap real money with toy bills, leading to sister-in-law's inadvertent confession, was actually my husband's, aiming to clear my name and hold sister-in-law accountable. With the truth now out in the open, my husband pointedly suggested that mother-in-law and sister-in-law owe me an apology, reinforcing father-in-law's statement with a stern look. Despite the clear evidence, mother-in-law tried to deflect, clinging to the notion that the house, being sister-in-law's childhood home, granted her certain rights. This situation underscored the complicated dynamics and tensions within the family, highlighting the need for accountability and perhaps a reconsideration of our living arrangements to ensure peace and respect for all involved. Mother-in-law insisted that sister-in-law could remain in the family home indefinitely. This stance might have been tolerable had it not been at my expense. My husband's supportive gesture, a comforting hand on my shoulder, bolstered my resolve. After a heartfelt discussion with both my husband and father-in-law, it became clear that the actions of sister-in-law and mother-in-law were unforgivable. Consequently, we collectively decided to sever our cohabitation arrangements. Mother-in-law was visibly taken aback by our decision, but I couldn't let her forget her role in this saga. "Remember, mother-in-law, it was you who made me feel like an outsider," I pointed out, causing visible distress in her expression. My husband then revealed he had recently spoken to sister-in-law's ex-husband, uncovering that her reckless spending and emotional manipulation were the true culprits behind their divorce. This revelation, previously unknown to us, left everyone in shock. "Why would you contact him without informing me? You're the one who deceived us, aren't you?" Sister-in-law protested, scrambling to deflect blame. However, the mention of possible compensation claims by her ex-husband, as hinted by my husband, drained the color from her face, leaving her trembling in fear. My husband's decision to reach out to the ex-husband stemmed from doubts about sister-in-law's narrative, further fueled by the distressing accounts from father-in-law and me. Seeing sister-in-law on the brink of tears, I firmly stated, "I've meticulously recorded every penny you've taken from me. You'll need to repay it all." These words marked her moment of defeat, as she slumped down, overwhelmed by the reality of her actions. Half a year later, the changes that ensued following our decision to live separately had profoundly impacted our lives, illustrating the importance of standing up for oneself and seeking justice within family dynamics. After the tumultuous events, my husband and I made the decision to leave the in-laws' house. In an unexpected turn of events, sister-in-law was asked to move out by my father-in-law. It appears that this situation served as a wake-up call for mother-in-law, who has since undergone a remarkable transformation. She has become more involved in household responsibilities and seems like a changed person. While they haven't completely severed ties with sister-in-law, they've opted to maintain a healthy distance, engaging with her only when absolutely necessary. The money sister-in-law had taken from my wallet was eventually repaid through installments, sourced from her earnings. However, she faced legal consequences for her actions during her marriage, culminating in a lawsuit filed by her ex-husband for emotional abuse, which required her to compensate him financially. Despite her previous claims of being the victim in their divorce, it became clear that her own choices led to these outcomes. In a surprising gesture of reconciliation, I received an apology letter from mother-in-law. Reading her words, I was momentarily reminded of the kind woman I met when I first moved in with the family. Yet, while her apology was a step towards mending fences, it couldn't erase the hardships of the past. With my husband's professional life becoming less demanding, we've begun to enjoy a peaceful and fulfilling life together. This experience has reinforced my resolve to cherish the love and relationships I have, and to ensure that my actions never cause harm to those I hold dear.